All right. For the last few weeks, we've been looking at the first couple of dozen hidden words, and we started really by looking at it from the angle of love, because many of the very first hidden words have the theme of love, the divine love that's within us, the love of God for us, our love for God. We read various quotations from the Baha'i writings about the different movements of love, the four kinds of love, and then the hidden words in the Arabic, as we're currently in, then move on to other themes. And I don't know how many times I've read the hidden words from the time I was a kid until now, but this last time when I reread it, I started thinking I was seeing themes that I wasn't seeing before, like groupings in the hidden words. Maybe this is just my imagination, but I have it here as like a proposal, if it's a helpful way of thinking, that there are groups of ideas that seem to me to be following a kind of logic. So hear me out on the logic. If Baha'u'llah is saying this is the essence of religion, and by the way, we started on the first class talking about how there's no intrinsic order to these. The way they're revealed on the page, there's no intrinsic order. But nevertheless, there is a standard order which is universally followed in all the Arabic and Persian texts, as well as in translation. And that standard order goes back to the time of Baha'u'llah, because many copies of the hidden words circulated during Baha'u'llah's lifetime. So it's possible that the ordering was in some way
on purpose.
On purpose. It's possible, but we don't know. So if Baha'u'llah is saying this is the essence of religion, this is like the inner essence of religion, then how would you go about sort of explaining? What's the first thing you would say? The first thing you would say, perhaps, is something like, "You're noble." Without religion, we would think, well, we're just animals. We've evolved from this earlier state, primate swinging from the trees a million years ago, and there's nothing intrinsically special about us. We're just part of the animal kingdom, and maybe we're more intelligent. We have extra capacities, but that's kind of as far as you could go. But what the story of religion is, if it starts anywhere, it starts with this idea of you're something beyond that. The essence of human reality is something which is in some way connected with something eternal, something divine, something beyond the physical condition. And that seems to me to be kind of what the first few Arabic hidden words are establishing, that divine spark within, that which is some kind of a connection with between the lover and the beloved. And we are in some way the lover, and we're in some way we're the beloved. But there's that starting point. And then the second thing you might say, if you're trying to express the essence of religion, would be something like, given that we are noble beings intrinsically, given that we're divine beings intrinsically, we are nevertheless faced with a choice. There's something we have to do. There's a consequence to either accepting or rejecting that reality. We can choose to be either near or remote. In other words, there's something at stake beyond just describing that you're noble. Well, you're noble, yes, but remoteness from that nobility is a possibility, as well as nearness. And that next grouping of hidden words, 15 through 24, seem to have that overall theme of nearness and remoteness, which to my mind is like introducing just the possibility that it could be otherwise, which implies, of course, that maybe there's something we ought to do to fulfill that thing that we are intrinsically, that it's not there on the surface. It's something that has to be discovered or something that has to be developed. And that would bring us to the third section. So you're noble, but you could choose to be otherwise. And if you want to fulfill that innate nobility, which is yours, then you have to act in a certain way. You have to comport yourself in the world in a certain way. There are prerequisites to attaining that. And then what you might say next is, what is the consequence of having attained those prerequisites? Reunion with the beloved, and that's actually the next set of quotations. Anyway, who knows if that's just something I'm imagining. But I don't think I'm imagining this grouping here that we're looking at this week, numbers 25 through 30, seem to take a sharp turn from the more mystical divine love within that we're seeing in the first couple of dozen. And suddenly with hidden word number 25, it switches to how we orient ourselves to those around us. Before it's us versus, or us in relationship to the beloved, us in relationship to God. Starting with hidden word number 25 and going to hidden word number 30, it's us in relation to other people. And how should we be oriented towards others, particularly in relation to those who are less privileged than us, who have the poor and the downtrodden, and how we should interact with others with integrity, with justice. The golden rule is expressed here, and so forth. It's also, I should mention that in the second Arabic hidden word, it's also very powerfully expressed. The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. So that's kind of a preview of this section in a way. So let's read these 6 hidden words, 25 through 30, and then I have, as before, some selections from the writings that drill deeper into the themes that we see in those half a dozen hidden words. First of all, the theme of care for the poor. Second of all, the theme of doing unto others, the golden rule. And thirdly, the theme of justice and fair-mindedness and speaking, aligning one's words and one's deeds. So starting with number 25. O son of spirit, vaunt not thyself over the poor, for I lead him on his way, and behold thee in thy evil plight, and confound thee forevermore.
O son of king, how couldst thou forget thine own faults, and busy thyself with the faults of others? Whoso doeth this is accursed of thee.
O son of man, breath not the sin of others so long as thou art thyself a sinner. Shouldst thou transgress this command, accursed wouldst thou be, and to this I bear witness.
O son of spirit, know thou truth. He that abideth men be just, and himself committeth iniquity is not of me, even though he bear my name.
O son of being, ascribe not to any soul that which thou wouldst not have ascribed to thee, and say not that which thou doest not. This is my command unto thee, do thou observe.
O son of man, deny not my servant, should he ask anything from thee. For his face is my face, be then abashed before me.
So when Shoghi Effendi describes the hidden words briefly in God Passes By, he describes it as Baha'u'llah's primary ethical work. And I remember being a little confused by that description when I first heard it, because I primarily thought of the hidden words as a mystical work, a work about our personal relationship with God and that mystical core. But this set of hidden words, which are not nicely grouped for us at least in the Arabic, we'll see about when we get to the Persian, seems to in some way constitute a kind of ethical core of the Baha'i faith, perhaps. Something about how we act towards others that are less fortunate than us. Something about how we need to act with integrity, not accuse others of things that we ourselves are doing, not to act in a hypocritical way, and also in a more positive way to act with justice and fair-mindedness. And these are all, I think, themes that are implied just in these few hidden words. So on the topic of the poor, we have, as in the handout, a number of quotations about half from Baha'u'llah and about half from Abdu'l-Baha. So why don't we read around these quotations first and then pause.
I want to say, like, it's kind of interesting that out of anything, any sin there could be, right? Murder, this and that. The only way that you can be cursed by God is if you backbite.
Yeah.
It is like the ultimate. So, like, the only mention that you see in the writings where it says accursed is related to backbiting. And I learned, like, I think in that class it talks about two forms of backbiting. Talking about someone behind their back that is false, that is not real, or talking someone bad about someone behind someone's back even if it's true. I think there's two words for it. There's backbiting and something else. I don't know, maybe someone else knows, but...
So what would account for just how incredibly strong the Baha'i writings are on that topic?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that Baha'u'llah could go really hard on. Lots of human vices, lots of, murder, theft, all sorts of things. But it's backbiting that seems to get the most attention. It's like the sharpest focus seems to be cast upon that.
But I think because backbiting affects how we think, so it has the most long-lasting effects, right? Because I can think someone is some way and have like a wonderful feeling about this person, and then someone tells me this one negative thing, whether it be true or false. Now I will forever look at this person with that negative thought, and it's I
It
don't know if
destroys unity.
yeah, it can destroy unity.
And unity is like the forefront of what it's supposed to mean. It's the complete opposite of it.
So maybe it's uniquely destructive of the social fabric. And because the Baha'i faith is so oriented towards creating a new kind of civilization that's characterized by a higher level of unity, maybe backbiting is. And maybe also there's such a focus because people think so lightly of it.
Yeah.
People just do it without even thinking that it's a little vice. It's but it's a seriously spiritually damaging thing for oneself and for a community.
Yeah.
It quencheth the light of the heart and extinguisheth the life of the soul.
Yeah.
But Judaism talks about it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot about in Judaism about how bad backbiting is. It's just said in a different word.
Yeah.
Could it also be, you mentioned in one of your classes in Kitab Iran that we shouldn't be looking at these writings as direct, kind of logical parables. We should look at them as poetic, right? So if we really look at it as poetic, there's a portion, in Seven Valleys, Allah says, you reach to the seventh valley, you start with search, and you have to be very patient, and even if it takes 100,000 years. Should I really take this seriously?
Literally.
It's not
We
literal.
should not take it literally.
Yeah, I don't live 100,000 years. Right? Maybe the same way we should look at this the same way. A little bit. Forgive me, Baha'u'llah, but Baha'u'llah every now and then exaggerates a little bit. I've seen that in his writing. He says, "In kullul umur," that means in the entire affairs. But when you look at it, it says, not really, not entire affairs. Or you would find this element in one of the, you would find this element in the entire nature. That's not true.
Superlative.
So
I think it's absolutely the case that hyperbole could be like a literary device that can be used to like particularly underline a subject that if you read it out literally, then it doesn't always follow scientifically that the thing is exactly as described. Here's an example. truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtue.
Right.
Everyone knows this one. But I wish I had this in front of me to read the others, but
Trustworthiness.
there's a bunch
is
of
also,
others.
Yeah.
Sincerity is the
And
foundation
one's
stone
like the
of
prince.
virtue.
One of them is the prince of all virtues.
Yeah.
and-
Courtesy.
So
Yeah.
courtesy is the prince of all virtues. Sincerity is the foundation stone of virtue. There's at least a half a dozen virtues that are all in different contexts elevated to the top, and I think that's an example of what you're saying, and it also, I think, illustrates the danger that's always present of isolating one passage and like building a whole structure of thought around an isolated passage. In the Baha'i writings, but more generally, human thought in general, but certainly in the Baha'i writings, they are, and people wrote to Shoghi Effendi often pointing things out of this
Right.
nature, and Shoghi Effendi would say things like, well, you have to consider them like a sphere. There are points that are on opposite poles, and in between are the thoughts and doctrines that unite them. Another way of pointing out the danger of that kind of isolating something and focusing on that to the exclusion of the surrounding context and the exclusion of what might otherwise be in sharper focus elsewhere.
That seems to be a sort of a common, I wonder if it's lower base nature. We try and get binary about black and white. Everything has to be,
Yeah.
exact. And yet,
Yeah.
it's not the way the world is created. It's there's all these colors and hues and context and all of these things. And in the Baha'i faith, it just seems like, or in religion in general, there are all these nuances, all these different ways of looking at things, and especially context. You apply teaching. It's like when I had two kids and they were so different, and I tell one thing. How come you told him, it's like, how come it's different for me? Well, because you're a different person, that's why, and so, one kid, I'll tell him, don't you ever do this, and the other, I'd encourage him to do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels like it's a necessary thing that we need, obviously, otherwise he wouldn't have done it, but we don't like that. We want definitive. We want everything to be definitive, and it just shows our immaturity, I think.
Yeah, that's
It's
a good
human.
point. It shows our immaturity. So I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, there is no manifestation that hasn't done this. I mean, that is the reason we have over 300,000 denominations in Christianity alone, like, based on the fact that they read one interpretation, that whether or not it was interpreted correctly to begin with, and that they took it at face value, and that was it. And then people are just segregated because of it, because of a concept. But then the same thing happened in Judaism, and the same thing happened in Buddhism, and
And none of them are actually necessarily that concept was false. It was just narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so if God, the all-knowing, knows that we are like this, why does he keep giving us the same test, right? Like in that same regard. Like every generation must go through this test.
Well, at least in the case of Baha'u'llah's writings, he
Yeah.
gives us, I think, the conceptual tools to overcome this problem. Whether we overcome it or not is up to us. But in so many cases, for example, Baha'u'llah would be presented with a dichotomy and would be asked to choose one or the other pole of a dichotomy. They asked him, some of your followers say you are God and others say you are a man, which is true.
Right.
Manachi Sahib says there's these 4 schools of thought about God in the world, deism and pantheism and theism and so forth, which is true. And there are several other examples. And in every single example, when Baha'u'llah is pressured into going binary, he never does. He always opens it up. He always leaves the field open to different perspectives. And he does this really beautifully in one of the more newly translated tablets in The Call of the Divine Beloved, where it's from the tablet to the B to the H, he says basically that because of the differences between human souls, he says there will always be as many different opinions as there are souls. As many different opinions as there are human souls. He says this is certain and settled and can in no wise be altered. So it just establishes as like a rock bottom fundamental the existence of diversity. Like radical diversity, not just diversity of dress and food and so forth. Like, how you approach God, what virtues you highlight, you surface as the most important virtue. Different souls are different. And Baha'u'llah recognizes this. And he allows, and he provides a framework for achieving a higher degree of human unity while respecting and preserving that fundamental diversity. Whether we do that, whether we're, how good we are at doing that, is kind of a separate question. And arguably, we're not that good at doing it yet because it's never been done before. We don't have any examples to turn to of a community that truly was accepting, that was united, strongly united, and at the same time accepted a high degree of variance in individual beliefs. In the past, unity was always a product of a hard, crystallized doctrine that produced the unity, but the side effect was it ended up closing out that community from the communities outside. And I think the one way to think about what the Baha'i faith brings into the world so uniquely is it's a faith community. So there's a divine revelation. There are scriptures that are considered sacred. There are fundamental spiritual fundamentals that unite that community. But at the same time, it's a community that embraces the diversity of thought. That it has to, if it's actually going to unite the world. Because it's certainly not going to unite the world by imposing a single dogmatic formulation. That's a tool that may have been effective in the past in a sort of in a regional sense, for one particular race or nation or religion. But it's not going to be it's not going to unite the world. And so one way or another, the easy way or the hard way, I think the Baha'is themselves are going to have to learn how to actually embrace and appreciate diversity. And that diversity, as Baha'u'llah says in this tablet to the B to the H, and as he says also in Gems of Divine Mystery, that diversity is so painful in a way. He doesn't use the word painful, but he basically says those people, who you're in this valley and the people in the other valley, you view as idolaters. You view them as irreligious. You view them in like the worst kind of category in your very being, because it runs against the grain of your mode of religiosity. But you have to come to a point of accepting these other modes of religiosity as equally valid. And if we don't do that, we're not gonna survive. We're not gonna thrive. We're not gonna be that attractive magnet that brings in all peoples and all races and all creeds. So and I think what we're looking at here is an aspect of that, sort of this apparent like binary focus on something at a given moment that invites us into a kind of, so this is the one thing, this is the only thing I have to worry about, or this is the only thing, and it might, I think, misleadingly lead us into a sort of binary thinking where this is true and therefore everything else is false. This is the most central virtue, therefore all the others are secondary to this virtue. But just like a gem, you turn the gem and a different facet is catches the light, and that's the way it is with.
And this is the essence of covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Covenant is not just don't break the Baha'i faith to multiple sects.
Yeah.
The covenant is ability to accept all these tribes and mindsets and ideas and perspectives within the same frame.
Yes.
Right?
And to stay united despite those differences.
Don't cut the religion into pieces. Just stay within and be able to accept.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
Well, one thing that you've mentioned in the past that I've found very helpful is to always remember that we're all wrong, right?
Yeah.
because none of us can directly know God, and religion is a roadmap, right? And that it's not necessarily always the thing, right? It's a representation of it, and we know that the next manifestation will come, and everything we probably think now is true is probably not, or at least not the way we understand it now. And so if I can recognize that my own understandings are helpful for me where I am to help me try to move forward, but they're just that. They're not the truth with a capital T necessarily. And that helps me to then be able to accept someone else's ideas and what's working for them, because we know that we're all wrong to some degree, and that's, I think, really helpful.
Yeah. No one has access to the capital T truth. Not even the prophets. Even Baha'u'llah says 10,000 prophets, each as great as Moses, stand thunderstruck upon the Sinai, their search at God's words, thou shalt never know me.
Prophets, not manifestations, though, right? The manifestations know everything, right?
I don't know. I think I read Baha'u'llah's statement as including himself. He himself says doesn't have access to the essence.
But is there truth to the idea that sometimes Baha'u'llah is talking about himself, Baha'u'llah, or himself, and sometimes he is speaking for God, as God, using the word of God, and other times he is the manifestation, the go-between, and depending on the context, he has different things to say that seem to contradict. Is that a real?
Well, if it is, then how do we know when he's speaking through one voice or the other?
Exactly. When I was reading Call of Divine Beloved, I was kind of running into that sort of going,
well, and sometimes in one paragraph he goes from I to we to he.
Let's read on and then maybe circle back to this. Tell the rich of the midnight sighing of the poor, lest heedlessness lead them into the path of destruction and deprive them of the tree of wealth. To give and to be generous are attributes of mine. Well is it with him that adorneth himself with my virtues.
O ye rich ones of the earth, the poor in your midst are my trust. Guard ye my trust, and be not intent only on your own ease.
Deal not treacherously with the substance of your neighbor. Be ye trustworthy on earth, and withhold not from the poor the things given unto you by God through his grace. He verily will bestow upon you the double of what ye possess. O ye rich ones on earth, if ye encounter one who is poor, treat him not disdainfully. Reflect upon that whereof ye were created. Every one of you was created of a sorry germ. Okay.
Daddy.
Is that lost in translation?
That's a Quranic phrase.
Beware lest ye encroach upon the substance of your neighbor.
I love that.
Prove yourself worthy of his trust and confidence in you, and withhold not from the poor the gifts which the grace of God hath bestowed upon you. He verily shall recompense the charitable and doubly repay them for what they have bestowed.
Be a treasure to the poor, an admonisher to the rich, an answerer to the cry of the needy, a preserver of the sanctity of thy pledge.
O servants, follow the path of truthfulness, and turn not away from the needy. Make mention of me before the great ones of the earth, and fear not.
Know ye that the poor are the trust of God in your midst. Watch that ye betray not his trust, that ye deal not unjustly with them, and that ye walk not in the ways of the treacherous. Ye will most certainly be called upon to answer for his trust on the day when the balance of justice shall be set.
If ye meet the abased or the downtrodden, turn not away disdainfully from them, for the King of glory ever watcheth over them, and surroundeth them with such tenderness as none can fathom, except them that have suffered their wishes and desires to be merged in the will of your Lord, the gracious, the all-wise. O ye rich ones of the earth, flee not from the face of the poor that lieth in the dust. Nay, rather, befriend him, and suffer him to recount the tale of the woes with which God's inscrutable decree hath caused him to be afflicted. By the righteousness of God, whilst ye consort with him, the concourse on high will be looking down upon you, will be interceding for you, will be extolling your names and glorifying your station.
Be ye loving fathers to the orphan, and a refuge to the helpless, and a treasury for the poor, and a cure for the ailing. Be ye the helpers of every victim of oppression, the patrons of the disadvantaged.
Those souls who are of the kingdom eagerly wish to be of service to the poor, to sympathize with them, to show kindness to the miserable, and to make their lives fruitful.
In this holy cause, the question of orphans hath the utmost importance. The greatest consideration must be shown toward orphans. They must be taught, trained, and educated.
You must assist the poor as much as possible, even by sacrifice of yourself. No deed of man is greater before God than helping the poor. Spiritual conditions are not dependent upon the possession of worldly treasures, or the absence of them. When one is physically destitute, spiritual thoughts are more likely. Poverty is a stimulus toward God. Each one of you must have great consideration for the poor and render them assistance. Organize in an effort to help them prevent increase in poverty.
We should all visit the sick. When they are in sorrow and suffering, it is a real help and benefit to have a friend come. Happiness is a great healer to those who are ill. This has great effect on this has greater effect than the remedy itself. You must always have this thought of love and affection when you visit the alien and afflicted.
The Baha'is are seeking to ameliorate the poverty, disease, and misery of the world's less fortunate citizens, just as much as to teach them the life-giving message of Baha'u'llah. And through social service, you will be able to help others, both materially and spiritually.
So, any thoughts about that? Is the Baha'i community known in general for its work with the poor just as much as its work propounding or teaching its own message?
Not yet. There seems to be a shift finally, and we're learning how to. I mean, you're seeing it when in the outreach of not. We kind of got away from the focus on teaching, and it's not like we're supposed to stop teaching. We're supposed to add to that with, we're new at it. I mean, there's churches who've been doing this, and their whole ministry is very well organized and very well done. They do a great job at taking care of people. And Catholic Social Service is probably the biggest, most, well organized and well run charity out there for helping people in that way. So we could learn a lot, and hopefully we will get there. But
Yeah.
it seems like we're just in our infancy.
Yeah.
Abdu'l-Baha is our exemplar of the perfect Baha'i, and so many stories of Abdu'l-Baha are him helping the poor, giving to the poor, giving to the needy.
Isn't the also story is changing all as well? The poverty here is not a problem of not having money. Poverty is much more. Poverty, I mean, it shouldn't be scientifically looking into this, right? Homelessness in Portland is not because of poverty. There are so many other factors involved.
Addiction, mental illness.
Yeah. It's officially a mental illness in the
There's a difference between poor and homeless people. Like, yeah, there's for sure people who are living paycheck to paycheck and barely making it by. And then you have homeless people, which for the most part seems to be mostly people with mental issues and addiction. Compared to like India, then you have children living on the streets. There's like another level of poor.
We have poverty today, like unlike we've ever had before. I feel like with the pandemic, having people living in their cars and still working, like that's the type of poverty I don't remember growing up. Like in New Jersey, when we go to Manhattan with my father, it would be like crazy people throwing themselves at you and asking for food. Now you could be among someone who's poor and have no idea. It's a totally different type of issue that we have in our society, and no, we're not equipped to do it. I know that eventually we will be, but I do think that sometimes we get caught up in what the LSA is supposed to do and what the community is supposed to do. And oftentimes many communities just have LSAs, and sometimes these LSAs are run in a way where it's just we stick to the plan and we don't think outside the plan.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with our immaturity. We have not had to take on such a vast undertaking, such as something not even simplistic, but like mental health, for instance, or having just a facility in general to house people and whatever need is needed. Eventually we'll have it. That's what the Advent of Divine Justice says. Eventually our communities will be Baha'i inspired communities in which we can build an area for the homeless, an area for the needy, to help support the police, help support the medical establishments. All of those little areas will then be developed, and we're slowly getting there. But after reading this, I do feel like we haven't thought about this as much.
Yeah, and also the picture has changed. A really good graduate of a master's degree, of a really good degree, who's making a really good money in San Diego.
Yeah.
Really good money in San Diego. He's still within a poverty line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the statistics in Portland are basically, if you look at the median, and again, it's an overall statistic, it's not, there's all these individual, but from what I understand, it's median income, even rental, not even talking owning house, you cannot have a full-time job at that median and afford the median priced apartment.
Yeah.
Not possible. So what's that going to do? So this institutionalized greed that in general is allowing people to fall by the wayside, and it's not. I think also statistically, so there's give and take there, but that most of the people who are homeless or houseless are not mentally unstable. There's quite a few. It's a major problem, but it's not the majority. Or drug addicted or whatever. It's people who are, like you were saying, living in their cars, sleeping on people's couches. It's these are people who may not be the smartest, but like you said, even people who have master's degrees.
Yeah.
So, when you see that, you go, okay, it's going to reach a point where it finally starts hurting our society enough that those who are real comfortable are going to start being uncomfortable. That's when things start to change. Those that are very comfortable and have a say in society will start to make those changes because it'll bother them.
Yeah,
which is an unfortunate
yeah.
reason.
But self-interest does drive things.
Yeah.
Totally does.
But to me as Baha'is, if we are trying to promote the oneness of humanity, and hopefully that those things we're also trying to build up the reason for doing it is compassion, is a spiritual, motivation, not just, oh, this is bothering me, we better change it because I'm inconvenienced. And that's what people do now. Oh, well, I'm going to vote for this person because they're going to take care of this problem. That way I can maintain what I'm doing. I don't have to suffer at all. And if they don't do it, we'll get somebody else to do it. Well, that's political answer is not going to work,
Yeah.
Not that it's not one of the tools.
I think it's also possible to avoid or to think of things in lots of different ways. There's more than one way to address things, and I think it's very Western to say go big or go home.
Yeah.
And if we can't do this as a collective statement or if we can't scale something up, then we don't do anything at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible, like if every person, even every person just that showed up in this room, as an example, I mean, we all are doing enough, but just took on one person to like champion or be with and help, like in whatever they're stuck in, that would be literally 10 times what's happening now in a given community. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to always be organized by in a top-down way. It can actually just be a personal outreach of what you would like to see. And the question is like, not everyone will see it, and that's probably even better.
Yeah.
But not, and this is why this quotation, I read this one a month or two ago, and I was like, whoa. Beware lest ye encroach upon the substance of your neighbors. Yeah. And it goes on to talk about trust and confidence. But I was really struck by that, about be careful that you're not encroaching on what someone feels. Like Kim earlier walked in, so it was a little late, but you're saying like, this is how I take something and it helps me move. The state of understanding helps me get through something, right? And imagine, like, and I was thinking, yeah, I've been there so many times where this is my understanding. And like somebody, I wouldn't want to encroach upon where someone's at and disturb that substance to the point where they feel paralyzed or they can't do something or they feel like they're wrong, so now they can't move and navigate the world. And so I took substance as more like something like that, a feeling you have about something or something where you feel this knowing, and then someone comes and they're just, they yuck your yum. You know.
I thought it was about like not letting your weeds grow over into the
That's exactly what it is, Randy, and that's what I'm talking about. Don't put your weeds into the garden of my heart.
Yeah. Don't get into my business. I thought for sure I was not to use it with Harry later on. Like, don't encroach on me right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm talking about two separate things there, but I just think it is very interesting that to me they are related.
Oh yeah.
Like if a person chooses to be their own personal ministry and serve others, why not? Like, why encroach upon their substance and how they're living their faith? Like maybe they see that as the way Abdu'l-Baha did it. Maybe they're trying to be that perfect exemplar in their own way.
There's definitely some power in that though. Like how Abdu'l-Baha thought and thinks in such a simplistic way, and yet he knew so much more than we do, knew in general. But he looked at things and acted in such a simplistic way. You know, like so a man doesn't have pants, so he takes off his pants.
Right.
You know, like it's just to think that way.
Yeah.
And we see it in our communities. We see like I think Susan is that type of person. And when I see her, I think of her in that same regard. My mom is a little bit like this, and she drives me insane. Because I'm like, I have to buy you back that shirt. Like, it's one of those things. But to think of life in such a simplistic way, I feel like is such an empowering concept that many of us can't have. Because we have that barrier that says, I need this, I only have one of these things. And I don't know, it's just, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be free from that burden of feeling that you can't.
And yeah, I think sometimes of the things that you give, you're a different kind of, you offer a different kind of service. It's like the one of the heart, the intellect. This is what, it's your passion, it's your excitement. I mean, you started this whole thing, right? It's the excitement, the joy you bring. And I feel like that also is needed. And, so.
Thank you. Very fun.
I really love this one line where he says to flee not from the face of the poor that lieth in the dust, nay, rather befriend him and suffer him to recount the tale of the woes with which God's inscrutable decree hath caused him to be afflicted. Just that it's so humanizing, and it's so like not laying blame.
Right.
And acknowledging that people are where they are for reasons.
Right.
And it's not, necessarily like because of their failings that they are where they are. I was really touched by that.
Yeah, and make the time to find out.
Right.
Listen to their story.
Exactly.
Like, make it your business.
Yeah.
That's cool. I actually I missed that.
Well, and then he says, if you do this, the conquerors on high will be looking upon you and interceding for you. I mean, it's just like really,
wow. Yeah.
I love those. I love that layer that Baha'u'llah always gives, which is like, this is a huge, vast thing you may never, ever, ever claim. You must always strive for it, but you'll never get it. But by the way, you're not doing it alone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when the last letter that we had, where it said, that there's all this complexity in the world, there's all these things that we're going to be having to be striving for, and all these things that we have to constantly looking for, but we're never alone. There's this constant hope. Like Baha'is have a hope. We may not all know what's going to happen in the world. We may also feel the despair of the severity of the world, but we don't. We also have hope because we're not alone.
Yeah.
So there's one little thing I'm curious about, and I've seen it in several different places. In one short phrase, O servants, follow the path of truthfulness and turn not away from the needy. And I'd go, how do those two go together? And he'll do it, and they go together.
Yeah.
And there must be something. It's not as simple. It's not simplistic. What is it about truthfulness and not turning away from the needy? Like, in other words, how are we, being false when we turn away from the needy? Or how does truthfulness apply to that? And that, I just think, well, there's something that I don't necessarily put those two together. I don't relate those two. And I've seen it in other places where he does that, like the quote about justice. It's I'm not going to remember it now, but it's where, I've never thought of justice from that perspective, and then you start to think about it and you go, oh my gosh, that's what it's all about. So I'm curious what people's thoughts are about truthfulness and the needy, and not turning away from the needy. Maybe it's simple. Maybe I'm just making it seem like it's a big thing that I'm not following, and it's very simple.
Yeah, what's the connection? How is one living dishonestly if one doesn't help one's fellow men, one's fellow humans?
Well, so that's a little nuance. Dishonesty is when you use that word as opposed to truthfulness.
If you flip both, does it help?
Yes. It does, yeah.
the contrapositive.
Yeah.
I frequently do that with
What?
the writings.
Yeah.
That's what it's called when you take the premise and the conclusion, you negate them both and flip them.
Yeah.
And if the original is true, that one will also be true.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's really helpful. It's like, but if I'm not feeling this, I must not be doing that, or
Yeah.
It also always makes me wonder about what was the original Arabic word or whatever, Persian word, whatever it was done in it originally, and what were the nuances in that word.
Sometimes that does help. I don't have to access it.
Let me see if they can remedy that.
Yeah.
What is TU, by the way? Tablets of
Tabernacle of Unity.
Tabernacle of Unity. Okay.
So Steve, the other thing we didn't look at is, so we are talking about monetary or wealth versus poverty.
Yeah.
What about other types of poverty?
Yeah.
Are we referring to other types of poverty? Educational poverty, spiritual poverty, physical poverty? Is it there? Is there evidence that this is referring to also? Because within like 200 years, the systems will change. Most countries will become like Denmark. System will provide you with housing. System will provide you with energy. System will provide you with everything.
Maybe we'll have a universal basic income or something.
Yeah. And then a different type of poverty shows up, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. And certainly educational poverty is strongly correlated with poverty and physical poverty, lack of money. But more interesting to me is poverty of spirit.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we also be under a spiritual obligation to assist those who are spiritually downtrodden, friends who are low? They may have everything in the world, but they're suffering through a depression. Don't we have the same kind of spiritual responsibility towards them?
Yeah, somebody who's poor in dopamine is suffering
Well,
depression,
it's
right?
like, what, enrich the poor, raise the fallen, strive, it's like
right.
whatever someone needs, provide it. That's
Yeah.
whether it's spiritual or material or
Be generous in prosperity and thankful in
Right.
adversity.
Or leave it. Trust of thy neighbor and what you're funny with us. Right in front of your face.
Treasure to the poor. Yeah, it goes on and on with those sorts of moral injunctions. So one way I always go to the wildly metaphysical, but one way that I go in that direction in terms of this question of care for the poor is like, well, what motivates you to care for the poor? This person from another family, another tribe, another race, another language group, whatever. Why should we care? Evolution means that the strong survive and the weak pass away. That's the way of things. Why should we go out of our way to help people? And I think there are many ways one can answer this. One way one can answer it is that because that other, that you consider the other, is actually not other. In a kind of mystical sense, we're all one. I think I was mentioning this yesterday. There's a tablet of Abdul Baha that's just dropped on the Baha'i Reference Library in the past year or so, where he talks about the deeper principle of the unity of the human race, being that we are in fact one. We're, viewed from one perspective, we are one soul, and so the other that we are relating with is really another facet of ourselves, because our true selves are all this. It's all the same self in a way. It's a bit counterintuitive and maybe a little bit strange to say, but that can be one of the motivating factors in the end of having this all-embracing care towards others. Abdul Baha says also, you can't love people for themselves. He says you have to love them in God and through God. What does it mean to love people in God and through God?
So that's different than doing something for someone because they are me. That's selfish, you know what I mean?
In a way, it's
It's
enlightened
self-serving.
self-interest. In a way, it is. It's a
But
kind of enlightened self-interest.
But here's my idea about that.
Uh-huh.
I really believe that that's not a sin,
Uh-huh.
so to speak. It's actually the way things work. It's there's this cycle of there's another word for it in the writings, but give and take. That you receive things and you give. You don't take. And you don't impose, and it's a flow. It's a system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the win-win is when you can give and you receive so much benefit from that.
Yeah.
But the motive needs to be that I'm looking towards this other person.
Yeah.
trying to be of service. But if our pure motive is always for the sake of God, then that's our purest of motive.
Yeah.
As opposed to, but if you do this and this is the way our political system's working now,
Right.
and at least it's one little step in a right direction.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but if you do this, you get a tax break.
Yeah.
If you give to the poor, you get a tax break. Oh, well, okay, then I'll do it. In other words, the only way I would ever give, and the unfortunate thing about that is reinforcing it doesn't ever teach anybody to be truly altruistic. But anyway, so to me, I think that's really kind of it's in every other system in the natural world. This cycle of the way evaporation and if we looked at things that way and never hoard, always pay forward.
It's like there's two equally strong statements made in the Baha'i writings. On the one hand, Baha'u'llah says that the pillars of civilization are reward and punishment. That's the edifice of society is raised upon these pillars. But the Bab, in one of his tablets, says, worship God in such wise that should thy worship lead thee to the fire, no change would be produced. Such and such only befits the worship of the one true God. Likewise should thy recompense be paradise. So he says the way we worship God should be completely absent the reward motive. It should just be for its own sake. Even if the recompense is hellfire, you should still do it for its own sake. And that's so radically different from Baha'u'llah saying reward and punishment are the basis of society, because there's the reward. Literally, he's saying reward motive is baked in. So how do you resolve? How do you square that circle? One way to square the circle is to suppose that the Bab is addressing the spirit. I hate the word, the spiritual elites. He's addressing those who sort of reached a certain level of understanding of things, that they don't need the reward motive anymore. But Baha'u'llah, in his incredible spiritual pragmatism, as the divine physician, knows what the remedy is in every age, and in this age the remedy still involves notions of reward and punishment, because humanity is still there and it's still going to be there for a while. But the Bab is asking us and inviting us into a much higher station, but that higher station where you do it even if the recompense is some form of terrible punishment. That higher station is, although we're called to it, is something that I think realistically very few people attain.
Do you know where the quote comes from? Whether ye receive praise or blame, there's and maybe it's after Baha, and he there's more before and after that. My mother used to say that to us all the time, about my brother and I, whether ye receive praise or blame, and so we're going to remember all the rest of the quote before and after that she had, told us, but that was the idea that it was her way of saying, because I said so, is what it was. But still, there's that element of, either one doesn't matter, because, and I think there's another place where it talks about with teaching, you teach for the sake of God, not because that person needs it, or I need it, or
you get the reward of 100 martyrs or whatever.
It's just because God said so. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So because we have these other amazing quotes, the golden rule is also, I think, implicit in some of these hidden words. And let's look at all the different ways Baha'u'llah expresses variations on the golden rule in his writings. Another way of thinking about sort of our fundamental posture or relationship to others. Ascribe not to any soul that which thou wouldst not have ascribed to thee, and say not that which thou doest not. This is my command unto thee, do thou observe it.
Wish not for others what ye wish not for yourselves. Fear God and be not of the prideful.
He should not wish for others that which he doth not wish for himself, nor promise that which he doth not fulfill.
If thine eyes be turned towards mercy, forsake the things that profit thee, and cleave on to that which will profit mankind. And if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself.
the children of men are all brothers, and the prerequisites of brotherhood are manifold. All among them is that one should wish for one's brother that which one wishes for oneself.
We have created you from one tree, and have caused you to be as the leaves and fruit of the same tree, that haply ye may become a source of comfort to one another. Regard ye not others, save as ye regard your own selves, that no feeling of aversion may prevail amongst you, so as to shut you out from him whom God shall make manifest on the day of resurrection. It behooveth you all to be one indivisible people. Thus should you return unto him whom God shall make manifest.
Forget your own selves and turn your eyes towards your neighbor. Bend your energies to whatever may foster the education of men.
Lay not on my soul a load which ye would not wish to be laid upon you, and desire not for anyone things ye would not desire for yourselves. This is my best counsel unto you, if ye but observe it.
Fear the sighs and tears of diswronged ones, and lay not excessive burdens on your people. Do not rob them to rear places for themselves.
Palaces for yourself.
Rear palaces for themselves. Nay, rather choose for them that which ye choose for yourself.
It is our wish and desire that every one of you may become a source of all goodness unto men, an example of uprightness in mankind. Beware lest ye prefer yourselves above your neighbors.
He must not wish for anyone that which he does not wish for himself, nor speak that which he would not bear to hear spoken by another, nor yet desire for any soul that which he would not have desired for himself.
Blessed is he who preferreth his brother before himself.
Friends of God, set forth the example of justice. Justice is a universal quality. From the highest to the lowest, justice should be sacred. From the sovereign to the merchant, the minister of state to the artisan, all must be just. Be just. Respect the rights of each man. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. A workman who commits an injustice is as much to blame as a tyrant. Each of us can choose between justice and injustice. I hope that you will be just in your relations with others, that you will never harm your fellows, that you will respect the rights of all men, and above all, consider the rights of others before your own.
I really like to kind of ask a question on this one. Forget your own selves and turn your eyes towards your neighbors. I think if you look at the social media now, it's all about, no, pay attention to yourself, love yourself, and then go to others.
Yeah.
I was raised with this.
Yeah.
And when I came to this country, I realized, I have no love for myself because I've always been thinking of others. I'm still thinking of others. Is this the right approach? Is this the right approach? Or is this, am I misunderstanding this whole thing?
I don't think anywhere he says, figure out your own self first and then turn to your neighbor. He always flips it.
Show me a family does say you should take care of yourself though before you can take care of other people.
Okay.
I did read that a while ago, and it was more, because I was stuck in that more view too, because my grandparents taught me to only take care of other people, to not think about yourself. They were part of the silent generation. You know, my grandfather was in the Vietnam War, and they were very Catholic-driven people, and so they always taught me that you worry about other people's needs, and then you worry about yourself. And then you grew up in society where it's all about me, me, me. And it's really, it's like a constant conflict of like who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think there's a medium ground in which you must take care of yourself. Like you must go to a doctor if you're sick. You can't forget about yourself.
Yeah, there's a baseline self-care that has to be there, otherwise you can't help others.
But that's a responsibility more to God even, to take care of yourself, because
Yeah.
that's how you are able to be of service to others.
But like in the modern New Age movement, to take one example, which seems sometimes to take self-care to such a, let's say, such a high level, does it,
Indulgent.
yeah, does it sometimes cross that line? I mean, because yeah, there is a valid spiritual point, I think, to be made about, you know, educating oneself, enlightening oneself before one can pass the light on to others. And the Baha'i writings do say this in various ways, in various contexts. At what point, though, does that sort of necessity to have self-care be there as a precondition, like, become an indulgence? I suppose every person has to just answer that for themselves, like, how much self-care do I need before really my responsibility should be to start focusing outward a bit?
It's got to be a moving target, or it's something that you feel and you see the consequences when you've overstepped one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, generally, if somebody is taking care of people to the degree that they're shirking other duties, for instance, or being obnoxious to other people. Oh, leave me alone! I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're complaining all the time about, oh, I have to take care of this person. You know, obviously they're missing the point, right? So it seems like there are prerequisites to that in terms of also your motives behind it. Because if you only look at the physical act of what you're doing and ignore everything else, well, then you're not really fulfilling any of the guidelines that that we're given. So I think motive is a huge part of it.
Well, I feel like too, like the first part of the hidden words that we've talked about, it is kind of focused on, you know, how we are all noble. So there's certainly, I feel like, needs to be, there's a healthy level of I don't want to say self-love, but just of recognizing that we have this capacity for being noble. So that seems like part of self-care, and just the requirements of, you know, daily prayer and fasting. Those are self-care things that we do as well. So I feel like a lot of it is built in, you know, that if we follow what it says to do, if we're reading the writings, and, you know, we're filling ourselves spiritually so that we have something to offer to others. So those, to me, feel like kind of that balance of self-care. You know, well, yes, I mean, if I don't take care of my spirit, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, you know, because my motivations are going to be all off, and the, you know, the love of God is not going to come through. So
Here too, we have Abdu'l-Baha as an example. You know, how did he overall orient his life? Is always towards care for others. At the same time, we know, you know, various, mainly through pilgrim notes, Abdu'l-Baha would pray long into the night and meditate and obviously fast, and he took much time for these activities as well. And you know, and during his journey in Europe and America, you know, he did visit the occasional rest place, although he really, you know, the occasional spa, but not. He didn't focus on that at all.
right, not as much as the believers wanted.
Not as much
him
as they
to.
wanted him to, but it really wasn't his focus.
You know, the thing is, though, I think if we're doing it right, I don't know if I've ever done it right, but, you know, when you're serving others and you really are in that space of true service to God, by serving your fellow human being, you are taken care of. But it requires you to have that purity of motive. If you're doing it out of these other reasons, you're not gaining the spiritual juices that you know that you would get from being of service to others in a selfless way. You know, because God, you want to please God, and I really feel like, you know, he talks about that. You know, that all the assistance that we're given, and I mean, people kept telling Abdu'l Baha to stop, and you need to rest, and what was it? He said, when it is necessary, my body can endure everything. And so that's also, he was wise enough to know when it was necessary, and it seems that, he is clearly, being taken care of by the concourse on high, and
I thought of a better example in relation to Abdu'l Baha in the U.S. and Europe, because he really didn't visit that many spas, but he went on lots of walks. I just read volume 2 of Mahmoud's diary. It just came out a month or two ago. It's a beautiful book. And when he was in Paris, he spent months in Paris. And just about every day he went out for sometimes hours at a time, just walking in the Trocadero garden, or walking in the downtown Paris, enjoying the sights, and he would often come back and be somewhat critical of the things that he saw. But he took a lot of time for self-care in that sense, partly keeping in physical shape, and partly, I think, also as a kind of meditative exercise. And that was it was a big chunk of his day.
Isn't there a tablet from Abdu'l Baha that talks about family and talks about children and parents? They all have rights that has to be taken care of to create the unity within the family. Do you remember such tablet?
Yes. I can't quote it back, but something like that.
So pretty much he is explaining that even it's not about forget yourself. It's about there are rights. You have to be within the boundaries of rights of yourself. As a father, you have rights. As a husband, you have rights.
Like responsibilities.
Yeah, he talks about rights.
Rights.
Yeah.
Did he say did he explain what they were?
No, there's no details, but he's talking about children have rights in a family, and those rights have to be obeyed. Boundaries, I would say, probably rights are meaning boundaries, something like this.
Well, that connects to the question of justice, which is the last section. So maybe we can read this last segue into the last set, because we're reaching the end of the evening. And the question of justice is definitely connected to the question of rights, but also justice is connected to the idea of fair-mindedness. And there's two different words in the Arabic and in the Persian, which sometimes are translated a little bit interchangeably, but we have a beautiful explanation of Baha'u'llah that one is a superset of the other. That will be in one of these quotations here. O son of spirit, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. And when it's in Saf, it's more like fair-mindedness. And when it's Adl, it's more like, let's say, social justice. Turn not away therefrom, if thou desirest me, and neglect it not that I may confide in thee. By its aid thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know with thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor.
Mommy.
O son of man, if thine eyes be turned towards mercy, forsake all things that profit thee, and cleave unto that which will profit mankind. And if thine eyes be turned toward justice, what is that all?
Adl, yeah.
Choose thou for the neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself.
This servant beseeches the one true God, exalted be his glory, to graciously adorn the world of humanity with justice and fair-mindedness in soft. Although in truth the latter is but one of the expressions of former. Verily justice is a lamp that guideth man aright amidst the darkness of world, and shieldeth him from every danger. It is indeed a shining lamp. God grant that the rulers of the earth may be illumined by its light.
Justice and equity are twin guardians that watch over men. From them are revealed such blessed and perspicuous
Is it perspicuous or
My
is it
eyes are
suspicious?
not seeing it.
It's I don't know.
Perspicuous.
Perspicuous.
Perspicuous? Okay. Again, and perspicuous words, as are the cause of the well-being of the world and protection of the nations.
Equity in Saf is the most fundamental among human virtues. The evaluation of all things must needs depend upon it.
Be fair to yourselves and to others, that the evidences of justice may be revealed through your deeds among our faithful servants. Beware lest ye encroach upon the substance of your neighbor.
Observe equity in your judgment, O ye men of understanding heart. He that is unjust in his judgment is destitute of the characteristics which distinguish man's station.
We ask God to endow human souls with justice so that they may be fair, and we strive towards for the comfort of all, that each member of humanity may pass his life in the utmost comfort and welfare.
Set forth the example of justice. Justice is universal quality. From the highest to the lowest, justice should be sacred. From the sovereign to the merchant, the minister of state to the artisan, all must be just. Be just, respect the rights of each man, do unto others what you would have them to do unto you. A workman who commits an injustice is in as much to blame as a tyrant. Each one of us can choose between justice and injustice. I hope that you will be just in your relationship with others, that you will never harm your fellows, and that you will respect the right of all men and observe all. And above all, consider the rights of others before your own.
I see that was in there twice, but it's a good quote.
Overlap.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It's a good one, yeah. All right.
So equity is insaf. Insaf is equity.
Equity is sometimes translated as ensaf. Sometimes ensaf is translated as fair-mindedness. And sometimes ensaf is just as translated as justice. So it gets those three translations at least. It makes it a little bit complicated to analyze the translations at this detailed level. Like if you're trying to parse justice versus equity, then you really have to go to the original words, because in translation it's gonna kind of be all over the map.
But here he says that fair-mindedness is an expression of the other justice.
Yes, that's such a valuable statement, I think, by Baha'u'llah. That the fair-mindedness, or ensaf, he said, is one of the expressions of adl. So you have justice as a more general term, and then within that is the concept of fair-mindedness, which I guess you could say is justice at the individual level of being able to see through your own eye, not through the eye of one's neighbor, just like in the second hidden word.
So the quote about justice that I was trying to think of it's the reason I remember it, because I finally did this because I had to think of the music. But you didn't include it. The essence of all that we have revealed to thee as justice is for man to free himself from idle fancy and imitation. Imitation. Discern with the eye of oneness his glorious handiwork, and look into all things with a searching eye. Which is, to me, is one of those things where I'm going, wow, that's what justice is. Because that's not what I would have thought of, but I always am intrigued by what is the meaning of that passage.
I should have included it actually, but I'm not sure why it slipped off. That's from the Words of Wisdom, and the Words of Wisdom gives all sorts of very counterintuitive definitions to things.
I love it. I love it. It's like a
really
new
makes
dictionary.
You think. It's like a bunch of Zen koans or something. Everyone makes you stop and think,
Yeah, that one I've always pondered how to apply that, or how to apply justice in that context.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for man to free himself from idle fancy and imitation. Yeah, imitation. Yeah.
That's like seeing through one's own eye, not through the eyes of
True.
one's neighbor.
Yeah.
Seems related. All right. Well, I think we're going to have to tie it off with the bow for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you